Welcome, friends of the European Environmental Bureau. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the EEB Annual Conference 2018, titled Getting to the Europe We Want. Nice to see you all here. I'm Jouni Nissinen, the president of the EEB, and I have the honor to open this event. I myself come from Finland, and I have heard at least Germans joking about some of the Finnish habits that when we start a meeting, we usually are quite silent in the beginning, and then after that somebody says a very useful Finnish two words, that is no niin, and then you start. So maybe we can all start by saying together this no niin. I count to 3 and then we say it. 1, 2, 3, no niin. Very good. Good morning. It basically means, well, let's start, or you can use it in very many situations. So it literally it means no, oh, well, but it's much more than that, much more than that. Yeah. So let's talk about some more serious stuff. After 2 very good conferences in Vienna and Edinburgh, after 2 games away from home, we are back for a home game again in Brussels. In American college football, the homecoming is a big thing to the hardcore fans of the team, followed by parties and cheers. So, for a while, let us imagine that we are all American students, rejoicing over the homecoming, feeling the coziness and familiarity of being at home again with friends. To many of us, this is definitely not the first EEB conference in Brussels. Let's continue imagining that we are all students, but this time we are on a campus of a Brazilian university, where the police has just raided the compounds, searching for anti-fascist material that they illegally interpret as illegal electoral propaganda against the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro. Let's imagine the frustration and fear for expressing political opinions that these people must feel, or their teachers who are questioned by heavily armed police for joking about fake news. Once again, one important factor behind a far-right electoral victory in the Americas. As you know, President Bolsonaro has announced that he will bulldoze the Amazonian forests and kill the indigenous peoples if necessary. The rise of this kind of fascism is not only a human rights issue. It is also a threat to the planet. One more image of a student. Imagine that you are a young Syrian woman, fearing for your life in the mindless civil war, ravaging around you for years, depriving you of any chance to get any education, not to mention having not enjoyed any personal freedom of any kind in years if you happen to be trapped in the territory occupied by ISIS. And this just next door to Turkey, where some of our EEB members come from. And we don't even need to go outside the European Union. We see signs of authoritarianism and fondness of undemocratic practices inside the European Union as well. For instance, unfortunately, in Hungary and Poland. And we have also already seen deliberate lying, that is fake news, in the Brexit referendum process. So we cannot claim immunity in the EU either, albeit an industrial-scale flooding of the social media has not yet happened in a major European election. But can we count on that not happening in the future, the European Parliament elections being one of the major events between today and our conference next year? And even if we are worried about this happening, can we prevent it? Is it enough to provide the EU citizens with more and more correct information? I think not. Psychology and recent experience tells us that if emotions and facts contradict, it is usually the emotions that take over. I see this interplay between sense and sensibility a very relevant question to this conference as well. It is one thing to vision a Europe that lives within its means, produces and consumes sustainably, becomes carbon negative, protects its waters and biodiversity, and cares for the rest of the world in reciprocity under the umbrella of the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. But it is an entirely different thing to really envision how we get there. It's also important to remember that Europe is getting relatively smaller in the world. It's not because we would have shrunk, it's because the others are growing. It may be in the interest of gentlemen Putin, Trump, and Xi Jinping to have a Europe that remains an outdoor museum and consists of nation-states quarreling with each other. But knowing from the Europol surveys that environmental governance is one of the issues that the European citizens want from the EU, this is clearly not the direction we want to go. Europe is indeed at a crossroads. Living within our planet's limits has been a long-stated goal of European environmental policy. Today, it seems further away than ever. The EU's greenhouse gas emissions grew again in 2017, and our society imposes a disproportionate environmental footprint. Recent bad news is that not only the different species, the biodiversity, is in decline, but also the number of individual living animals is dropping dramatically, be it insects, birds, or mammals. What would make us Europeans practice what we preach? What would make us change our lifestyles so that we would live closer to the natural limits? Do we have the courage to look for an alternative economic model that does not require eternal growth, but still provides us with well-being? As first steps into the right direction, do we even have the courage to close tax havens or make environmental regulation matter in trade agreements? Can we ban fossil fuels once and for all within a decade, or stop using meat as part of our everyday diet? These are all necessary steps if we believe what climate scientists tell us, and most of us do. We already know the big changes that are required, and I'm hoping that the discussion in this conference will give us ideas about how to make them happen. This morning we will have a high-level panel discussing the greening of the EU. In breakout sessions, you have a chance to engage in debates about EU climate policy, biodiversity protection, or non-toxic circular economy. We will conclude the day connecting the dots to find a common ground for a sustainable Europe. And tomorrow, the EEB is launching an ambitious long-term strategy process. And in addition to learning from each other today, I hope we also get building blocks to take from here, or even some core elements. Already at this point, I want to thank Tatiana Santos, Roland Jöbstul, Sergio Moros, Abraham Lombrana, Giacomo Udukor, Alessia Biasioli, and the whole EEB office staff for putting together this interesting program and other annual events. Today, in the coziness of our homecoming event, it's important to keep in mind the Brazilians and realize that we are facing the threat of a multiple-factor backlash to human rights and democracy, and because of these, a threat to our ability to protect the environment and defend the nature that we depend upon. But at the same time, the new IPCC report has been discussed more widely than ever before, and we have a chance to turn the EU elections into a discussion about climate, environment, and hopefully justice. Maybe the Syrian girl is also getting a chance to go to school to learn about restoring ecosystems and the society in her home region. For all this, however, we need the combined intellect of the whole environmental community, the scholars, and everyone else who feels the need to learn and be part of the solution. Together, we can. I'd like to finish with the concluding words of the famous German playwright Bertolt Brecht in his Good Person from Szechuan. The right way out of the calamity you must find for yourselves, so ponder, my friends, how man with man may live in amity, and good men, women also, reach good ends. There must be some end that would fit. Ladies and gentlemen, help us look for it. Welcome.